All right, what's up, everybody? Wes Mitchell here, Chris Clark, and Cortland Allen is ready to roll. He said 6:45, start this thing. Let's do it. So we are here. I tell you, Chris, and by the way, if you don't know us, I'm Wes Mitchell. He is Chris Clark, and we are, of course, with Gamecock Central. And I believe for the first time, Chris, we are live on YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope/Twitter all at once, which normally we maybe do one or the other. So right now we're trying to hit everybody. And hopefully if you hit us there in the chat, no matter where you are, YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook, there on Periscope, we should actually be able to see any comments. So first of all, I want to welcome everybody here to our live stream. And first of all, I want to hear from everybody. Where are you from? Where are you joining us from? And what were your thoughts on the schedule, the first part being announced earlier with Tennessee, and what we're waiting on right now in about 13 minutes, the SEC Network will start their show again to announce the rest of the schedule. And Chris, as I bring you in, man, I have let myself, for the longest time, I think we all tried to hold back a little bit. Even when we thought there was probably going to be a season, and granted, we still don't completely know, but there was always this little bit of like, all right, is there going to be a season? Is there not going to be a season? And now, dude, I'm in at this point. I've let myself start to get excited. I've let myself dial in from a work standpoint. And now I'm just really hoping that the rug doesn't get pulled out from under everybody, because I get the feeling that the fan base, even if you were a little bit iffy before, the fans on our message boards, the fans on Twitter right now, they're excited for some actual football talk. So today, I think it actually hit me that we maybe are closing in on some SEC football.
It's real, isn't it? It seems a lot more real now. And we've talked about it for so long, and now we're sort of on the doorstep, of I think a lot of different things have happened, that make it seem like it's going to happen. Everything from just statements that the SEC and the Big 12 and the ACC have put out. Hearing Will Muschamp talk today, even, I think, and we'll dive into some more of that, of course, here in the next few minutes. But just a lot of the comments he had, things that Greg Sankey's had, some of the numbers in the state of South Carolina. It's not the case everywhere, but just in the state of South Carolina, they've gone down. Certainly, we might feel a little bit differently. We might have more skepticism if, say, the numbers had been, tripling, as opposed to going down. There's still some obstacles. One fear that everybody's had for quite some time is start the season and then have to interrupt it for whatever reason. So you still have sort of that unknown of what's going to happen now that students are back on campus at places around the country. You still got, what if there's outbreak on teams? There are some of those things, but what we do know is football, the potential of it, is in a much better place than it was. And I think the schedule releases and a lot of the stuff that's starting to come out has sort of made it real, for a lot of people, including us.
Yeah, and we certainly hope that this isn't like what happened with the Big 10, the Pac-12, where the schedules were announced and then next thing you know, they're canceling. But I think at this point, the SEC, it's obvious they believe they can move forward and that they're going to do everything they can to get the season in. And, I get the feeling, Chris, you and I have tried to ask around. We've tried to cover every side of this. I feel comfortable saying that. We've tried to cover every side and ask around, hey, are you comfortable talking to people close to kids in the program, talking to people, maybe that have kids in the program, and trying to find out for sure where everybody's head is at as far as the comfort level with this thing. And I think the overwhelming answer we've heard is that the kids that are there, obviously Carolina had 2 opt out, and that's fine. And I think if you're not 100% in, if there was any doubt, then that was the right move, for those guys to opt out. But the guys who are still there, they want to play, I think. And I think that the families that we've heard from have been very comfortable with the way South Carolina and the way the SEC has sort of had a forward-thinking approach to this. Lots of testing, heavy protocols. I'm sure it's a pain to have to wear a mask to practice. I'm sure it's a pain to have to go through this stuff every single day, but you get the feeling, Muschamp even said it. We're a little bit better off at managing this thing now than we were in June, I believe was the way he said it. So I think the guys are sort of settling into exactly how this is going to work.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there's still a lot that we're learning about everything. I mean, several months ago, we weren't going around wearing masks and stuff like that. I mean, we've learned more. And in some places, what it appears here is that we're doing a better job managing it as a collective society within the state. Certainly, we know a little bit more. There's still a lot to be learned and a lot of progress to be made. But it does certainly help that we have some information to work off of, and that they have been able to learn on the go a little bit. To go back to your point regarding parents, have we talked to everybody? Absolutely not. That'd be really hard to do. But we have talked to a lot of people, and there seems to be a pretty high comfort level, with what is being done, both at the South Carolina level, the SEC level, and the appearances that people feel pretty good about it. Generally, pretty good to really good. People understand in certain situations there may be some risk, but a lot of them, I've actually heard a lot of compliments from people just in terms of how things are handled. I had one parent tell me, the line that we've heard a good bit, that I feel like my son is more safe being on a SEC football team right now, being around that team and maybe not being at home and maybe potentially exposed to other elements or more, wanting to go be exposed to more elements because they do have the season to look forward to now.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of it, man, is having the, it's one thing to be a college kid, and it's one thing to sort of be in a situation where, you're being told, hey, guys, you got to be careful, you got to social distance, but you get back to campus right now, you're around your friends for the first time in a while. That's one thing. It's another thing to be a college football player with the incentive of being able to play the game you love. And that's been the guy, like we said, the guys that are there, they want to play. So having that incentive, I think is huge for these kids, and having the protocols. Right now, they're getting tested once a week. That will get ramped up to 3 times a week during a game. Can an outbreak happen? Yes. We're not saying it can't, but, there are obviously lots of things in place to try to prevent that. And the testing protocols continue to get better as well. I was actually, so let's talk. We don't want to talk completely just about coronavirus this whole time. We want to talk some football. I know that's what y'all want to talk about. Timothy Hopper, the rest of the schedule will be out on SEC Network at 7:00. So the entire sort of thought of this setup is that we're going to talk a little bit about what Muschamp had to say earlier. We've got, I know, Chris, you've got it on over there. I've got SEC Network on right here. And once the schedule comes out and becomes official at 7 is when that show starts. I don't know how they're going to do it. We will then sort of give a little quick rapid reaction breakdown to the schedule. And then, we'll probably take some of your questions and be on here for about an hour and go from there. So we'll have fun with it and talk a little bit of Gamecocks football. But first of all, final thought on Corona for now. The biggest maybe surprise or positive, I thought, was Muschamp saying their turnaround is that they get tested, and then most of the time by the end of the day, they have an answer. And, he credited some, is it Nephron, the local lab that he credited for getting their results in quick. I think when all this started, having adequate testing and a fast enough turnaround was a huge key to anything taking place as far as sports. So that's a big deal. The new saliva tests that are have just gotten FDA approval that the NBA is using, I think that will be a big deal during the season as well. Okay, so the interesting thing about these live streams that we've been doing more of, Chris, is that most of the time we get a mix of people who are already GamecockCentral.com subscribers and a mix of people that just follow us on, in this case, Facebook, YouTube, and on Twitter. So for those of you who normally see us on YouTube, you already know about this. If you're new on YouTube right now, we're going to do our little weekly action all together now, where we hit the subscribe button on YouTube and then hit the little bell on YouTube as well, so that we're all on the same page. Also, if you see scrolling down right beneath me right now, you should see a fancy little graphic that I put together about 5 minutes ago that says, use the code Gamecocks on GamecockCentral.com to get 50% off your first year and 3 additional months free for new subscribers. So when we do these videos, we're not going to hold back. We're not going to sell you. We're not going to sort of dangle the carrot. We're not going to say, hey, we'll finish this sentence if you subscribe to the site. But all we ask is if you are a little bit, just maybe even a bit intrigued by what you hear and you've never signed up for GamecockCentral.com, all we ask is that you give us a shot, and then we're not going to try to sell you for the rest of the show. So that's a code right there. If you use Gamecocks, you'll get 50% off your first year. That's like $50, plus we'll give you a free extra additional 3 months. If you're not sure yet, you can go on there, use the code GC60. That'll get you a free trial of 60 days. So again, we're not going to try to sell you all show, but if you're intrigued, go check us out, GamecockCentral.com. All right, let's talk football. Chris, I didn't think there was a ton completely new. And by the way, it's 6:57. I'm watching on Hulu Live. I know, Chris, you're on YouTube Live. So if those of you who are watching on satellite or cable, y'all might actually see the schedule before we even do. But as soon as it's out and everything, we're going to talk about it. But Chris, from a football standpoint, it was great to hear some football talk from Will Muschamp today. But I don't know, how much new did we learn, or did you learn anything new? A lot of it was sort of some rehashing of what we had heard. Was that 2 weeks ago that Champ talked? Maybe a few new things. I thought I'll tell you what. I've talked enough, Chris. What stood out to you about the 45-minute press conference from Will Muschamp earlier?
So there were a few new things, and I don't know how much time we want to spend on this. He did make a statement about Mike Bobo. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, or just sort of we can maybe skim it in that just, he defended Mike Bobo. Wes, that sort of goes along with what we've heard. Our expectations very much that situation is going to be fine from a South Carolina standpoint. But in terms of on-field stuff, I think just hammering home Muschamp did that every position's open. He was asked about the quarterback battle, which was not a surprise. It's sort of a hot topic given all the stuff that's come out. And Wes, I know you've been reporting on that since, February, March, about Colin Hill and Ryan Helinski and the sort of the battle back and forth there. But he reiterated that was open. He did say Chandler Farrell may play some defensive tackle along with tight end and fullback, so he's going to be Mr. Versatility this year. He talked a little bit more in depth about Jalen Brooks, the transfer wideout. They feel like they've got a pretty good case, to get him eligible. As we know, the NCAA, they sort of hand these out at random. Jalen Brooks, maybe if he applies as a quarterback, he'll get onboarded pretty quickly. I saw Cade Mays from Tennessee just got denied a waiver, by the way. So those are the main takeaways. A couple little injury updates, but nothing huge. I think a lot of it was talking about protocols going into the season and sort of reiterating some of the team stuff, talking about receiver, talking about some of the needs in recruiting and the team that are stepping up. But in terms of surprises or anything incredibly groundbreaking, I know that I heard a lot from the presser today.
Yeah, and I would say that it did the obviously anytime there's sports right now, COVID and Corona is going to take some of the spotlight away from actual sports. The Corona talk did start to drawn on and on and on. I felt like a bit by the end. So Jalen Brooks, that was interesting, Chris, to hear for us to hear him sort of reiterate some of the things we had heard, about Brooks when they landed him, when he committed and he enrolled. With that stuff, every now, sometimes you hear stuff, and let's be honest, it's a little bit more positive because guys are going to talk up their guys. But to hear Muschamp talk about Jalen Brooks and talk so positively about the ability the early impression and stuff like that, to me, that said something about their expectations for him and what he could possibly bring to this program and potentially this year if the NCAA gives him his waiver. By the way, I've got it pulled up. Hopefully, so the thought is hopefully y'all have SEC Network up in the background on your TV, and then you can have us up on your on your laptop or your phone or wherever. So I'm going to try and sort of – do you have it up right now as well, Chris? I think they're going live on SEC Network right now as we speak.
I got it on the TV, and Dari and Greg McElroy are talking, and Roman Harper. So those guys are all up there right now. So if my eyes are looking away, I'm going to check that out every now and then. But
we'll see how they do this as well. This is new for us as well to be talking to y'all following this. Chris, I'll give them credit earlier when they put out the Tennessee thing for South Carolina. They just got right to it. They didn't sort of roll it out.
Right.
I got a feeling they're going to make us wait on this one.
Yeah, I would think so.
I also got a feeling that week 2 is also going to be SEC East. So I don't know. That's just a thought.
Prediction time. Okay.
Yes.
I'm thinking they may go week by week. That sort of makes sense. We already know week 1. Hey, here's week 2. Show them, talk about them, blah, blah. Just a guess. I don't know how they're going to roll this thing out.
Yeah. Okay. So anybody watching Facebook, YouTube, or Periscope, who do you think is week 2?
And they just rolled week 1. So this is what I'm thinking they're going to do, Wes. They just put the 7 games up for week 1 all at once.
Okay. So you're a little bit ahead of me.
Yeah.
If y'all want to give me your guesses for week 3 for South Carolina, if you're watching right now, give me your guesses week 3. The first one to get it right, I'll give you 3 months free to Gamecock Central at the end of the show.
Look at that.
So we already knew that. Tennessee at South Carolina.
Yeah.
Week 1.
Hey, that one is super intriguing. We've talked a lot in the offseason about how, and this is before there was any inkling that the season was endangered or whatever, but we talked a lot about that, how that may be the most important game possibly of this season. When you just talk about it being a swing game, a game that South Carolina can still win, that's a key. And for recruiting. Now here's week 2. You were right, Wes. South Carolina at Florida. Give yourself a hand. A Gator clap.
Gator clap. What do you think of that? Trip to the swamp.
Yeah. So back-to-back East opponents. You get Tennessee at home. You get Florida in the swamp. That's a big one for Carolina. Past 2 years, you go down to the swamp in 18. You're up big. End up losing that game. You're up last year at home. The week after they beat Georgia, you lose that one. Little revenge factor potentially there for the Gamecocks. And obviously a couple big divisional games, back to back.
I think y'all need to keep guessing on week 3. That will be my hint for you. Actually, no, I think one of you might be right. Tom P., you need to talk to me after the show. I think. Yeah. Where are they at on your screen right now, Chris?
Yeah, we got week 3, South Carolina at Vandy.
Okay, good call. Who was that? Tom P. Write this down, Wes at GamecockCentral.com. That's my email, just Wes at GamecockCentral.com. Shoot me an email. You got 3 free months to Gamecock Central. We'll get you hooked up. Vandy, so all right, so I would say a toss-up against Tennessee, a tough game at Florida. Then it eases up a bit at Vandy.
Yeah.
That's must win for South Carolina, obviously.
Oh, yeah. That's one that there or maybe that might be the only game that you look at and you go, that's not a gimme, but it's as close as it's going to get this year, right?
Yeah.
So that's one you absolutely got to have.
I'm going to say August 17th, Colin Taylor's wedding. He was hoping for a bye week. I don't think he gets it.
Of course not. No, because that's how it's going for Colin right now. Yeah. So we're still in week 3 now. Probably about to roll out week 4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
week 4, I think, is probably where you mix in one of the new teams.
Yeah. So we got Auburn at South Carolina week 4.
Okay.
Back at home.
South Carolina has not defeated Auburn since they joined the SEC. Chris, I did a little bit of research on Auburn this week for our newsletter. Obviously, they always recruit well. They have talent. They lost pretty much their entire offensive line. And some really talented guys on defense. Bring in a new offensive coordinator who's very familiar with everyone, or everyone's very familiar with him, Chad Morris, the offensive coordinator at Auburn.
Yeah, it's going to be really intriguing. South Carolina fans will want that one badly. Last time they played Auburn, 2014, at Jordan-Hare, the Steve Spurrier, I'm going to go for it on every 4th down play. They scored a bunch of points, but so did Auburn. Auburn scored a few more. And so, so that's one that South Carolina won't. So they bounce from, by the way, Georgia at Alabama that same week. So that'll be a good one. So they bounce back and forth. You got home, away, right? No, you got home, away, home. I'm sorry. Yeah, I messed that up.
I'm thinking you're on the road again next.
Yeah, week 5, Carolina at LSU.
Very tough.
It's going to be a tough one.
I would say after week 5 would be a perfect time to mix in the bye week. 5 and 5 on each side. But now I'll tell you, Chris, LSU at LSU is always going to be daunting. South Carolina, if you looked at if Vegas, I don't know if they have lines out on this yet right now, Carolina would be a huge underdog. But Joe Burrow ain't walking through that door. Their offensive coordinator is now our Panthers offensive coordinator. So is this game as unwinnable as it would appear just on the schedule?
Well, it's going to help that it's, there's no potential for a night game with that many LSU fans in the stadium. We don't think that'll happen, right? That'd be very, very shocking if that happened at this juncture. And then they did lose they had 14 players drafted. 14. You're right, Wes. Bye for Carolina the next week, by the way.
And see, we're getting a cup. There's some people you can tell who's watching on cable and satellite versus on streaming. Which I'm at my girlfriend's house. I'm trying to get satellite or cable up in this room, but it's not working. So we're just hanging in there. But yeah, so week 6 bye. Hey, perfect time for a bye though, right?
Yeah, I mean, you come off the first half. And, again, and I don't want anybody to take this away as that, oh, man, this sets up perfectly for South Carolina. I mean, but when you're talking about it, it's not like so far they've just been stacked with, 3 just, daunting, hit you in the face, types of games. They don't have Georgia, LSU, and Florida back to back, in other words. Mm-hmm. So that does help you. Then you have a bye. Go back to the LSU game briefly before they go ahead and hit us with the next one, since we are on a bye right here. LSU had 14 guys drafted. I mean, they're still loaded with they got a lot of underclassmen talent. They've recruited very well. But it's not like going and playing LSU last year. It's still a very tough game. LSU will be favored. They should be favored.
Yeah.
But difficult game.
I'll tell you, man, a team that I think is probably really talented that isn't being talked about as much would be Texas A&M. I think that's going to be a tough matchup for the Gamecocks. And another team, this one that they haven't beaten at any point ever, right? So Auburn, they haven't beaten since they joined the SEC, but A&M, I believe, South Carolina. But that's an opportunity. It is at home. It's something where we've seen South Carolina compete against A&M, and then we've seen them last year really just not play well at all. That was the game that I think we all looked around and said, this I would say just top to bottom, especially offensively, that was when the bottom sort of fell out. So A&M, not a great matchup for South Carolina last year. They have, I think, some veteran guys coming back, but it is in Columbia, so, we'll see.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, it's, again, another team that's recruited pretty well. They've got talent. They did lose some off that team, but I mean, it's another one. I think of it along the same lines as Auburn, and I think it'll be similar difficulty level on both of those games. But you got situation where speaking of 2014, that A&M game, to open first game on the SEC Network, absolute housing by A&M, and people still remember that, still talk about it, and they've had a few close calls since then, or a couple close calls since then. So another one that, man, I honestly think it's winnable. It's not one of the least winnable games on the schedule, but it's still going to be a very difficult game, and I think that's a theme throughout the schedule, and just how difficult some of these games are.
Brian Beatty says Kellen Mond is coming back for his 8th year.
Dude, I was going to say that. I think he played alongside, I don't know, I think he played against Muschamp when Muschamp was at Florida or something. He's been there forever.
There's always those guys, right?
Yeah.
There's always a guy.
I think Kellen Mond redshirted during Johnny Manziel's senior year or something. I mean, it seems like he's been there for so long now.
Dude, who was when I was in school, who was the quarterback for Arkansas? Is it Matt Jones?
The really athletic one that changed to wide receiver in the NFL?
Yes.
Big tall white guy?
Yeah.
Matt Jones. Yeah.
That guy was there for 10 years, I think.
At least.
Yeah, Chris says Bakari Rambo for Georgia. He was there forever.
He's not on the roster anymore? I thought he still played. Saw him out there last year.
Donnell Stanley here.
Yes.
Andy Boyd. By the way, if you're watching, happy birthday, Andy Boyd. I actually saw it was former Gamecock tight end AB's birthday yesterday. So great guy, man. I was at school with AB. Hunter Renfro, yeah, he was there forever. Hey, by the way, met Hunter Renfro's cousin at that Friday camp that I was at in Spartanburg. So anyway, are we still on commercial? Is everybody on commercial right now? I know some of y'all are.
And since we're live TV or whatever, live video, I'm going to go turn on another light real quick.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll be right here. But as Chris rolls along. But okay, yeah, so we're still on commercial. Yeah, like I said, guys, if you haven't tried Gamecock Central, give us a shot. And Chris is back already. I tell you what, I want to know who gave us a sad face reaction on Facebook. That ain't cool. We got a couple of likes, a couple of loves, but somebody gave it. Oh, you know what? I can see who did it. Timothy Mark Hopper, we're calling you out, buddy. No sad faces, but yeah. So so far, Chris, any thoughts on the schedule? We already knew who the teams were, so it's just a matter of how they were going to be spread out. As far as is it going to be tougher, or do you have two just crazy games back to back? Any early thoughts on how this thing is set up?
Well, I go back to what I said earlier in that. This is a challenging schedule. It's all SEC all the time, which is the case for everyone. So you got 10 straight games. You'll have a bye in between 5 and 5, which is nice for South Carolina. You get the break right smack in the middle, which is nice. And you don't have, say, okay, Georgia at home, Florida in the swamp, LSU away, and then another game after that, so it sets up when you take the totality of what the schedule is, what it's going to be, factoring in the two new opponents, and then you sort of split it up. It's a pretty decent draw in that regard for them, I think, so far, from what we've seen and then what they'll get. Because now, you're going to have Georgia on the back end. You're going to have an away trip to Kentucky. Right, you've got LSU up front, you've got Florida up front, you got Tennessee. So for what it is, I think you take the 10 games and then you say, well, how can it be balanced? To sort of maximize their chances. And I do think the draw could have been worse, for them from that standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, man, there was no easy configuration for this thing. If you're going to play 10 SEC teams, we already knew who the 10 were. They added Auburn, they added Ole Miss. Could they have possibly got a little bit easier draw with the additions? Would Arkansas have maybe been a little easier than Ole Miss? I would say yes, but I think we all knew that they were probably. It just felt like they were going to add Auburn. That was rumored well before it was actually announced. And then you were probably going to get an Arkansas or an Ole Miss or somebody like that. You probably weren't going to get Alabama because you just played them last year. So as far as this thing goes, you got 10 games. There's really no gimmies. And while we're waiting, let's go back to Tennessee. And the people that are live are getting back from commercial right now. JBSC, what week are y'all on as far as live? My girlfriend says that we're the best on Facebook. That is nice. Okay. So, but yeah, are we on week 6 or 7?
We'll be on 7 because 5 games, then a bye. So.
Okay. So they're about to put that out. But while we're sitting here waiting, man, let's go back to opening the season with Tennessee. Talk about an opportunity to set some momentum for the rest of the year in what is a winnable game, but also is a game that South Carolina will probably be an underdog, and there you see it making it official. Texas A&M, we already talked about them a bit, but that to me, Tennessee is intriguing in that it falls right in that category of you're not expected to 100% win, but you're not expected to get blown out, and is sort of a swing game right off the bat.
It's a big one, man. I mean, we talked so much preseason about the Gamecocks in Tennessee and how, Georgia is regarded as top dog in the East right now, and they've earned that. Florida, it had a really good year last year. The expectations, people are talking them up this year as sort of a dark horse, type of pick, and they're expected to have some firepower and be good again. And so for South Carolina and Tennessee, they're trying to sort of take that next step. Tennessee's trying to win this game against Carolina, try to give the impression that, all right, 1-2 straight now, we're passing Carolina, we're leaving them behind, we're going to try to catch these other big dogs, right?
Mm-hmm.
For South Carolina, you want to stave that off. And so being able to get, they had some success against Tennessee. They had the backslid a little bit last year. So try to go out and win this one and then recapture some recruiting momentum too. These schools are going to recruit against each other a ton, lots of carryovers. So it's a really big game right from the outset.
Yeah, week 8 at Ole Miss being announced there. The Fighting Lane Kiffins. I'm very, very curious to see what Lane Kiffin can do.
Yep.
Year 1 at Ole Miss. And I'm very curious to see what his quarterback competition ends up being like. Chris, I didn't realize this until they added Ole Miss to the schedule. Until today, Lane Kiffin had not even had a practice with his team. They didn't get spring practice at all. So if you're a new coach and you didn't get spring practice, then that is a tough situation.
It's crazy, man. I mean, and imagine, I just think about the totality of all of it, right? Like you're walking into a situation where you don't get spring practice. You don't really know your guys. I mean, you can have meetings and stuff now, but they haven't been on the field until OTAs and everything. So that's completely and utterly new for them. And then from recruiting, I mean, you're going on a situation where, you haven't gotten all these guys on campus really. You might have some pre-existing ties, different schools and all that, but, you're really going completely different into it. So it's going to be, it's sort of expected to be a transitional year for Ole Miss. And they've still got some pieces on that roster. But that's another game where despite it being on the road, it's winnable for South Carolina and one they need to win to have success. And speaking of that, week 9, Missouri at South Carolina.
Yeah, there you go. Missouri official.
Yep. That's one they got.
After Missouri, you got Georgia and then Kentucky, and that will finish out the schedule. But Missouri, another one of those, Chris, that we put into the category of I hate the phrase must win, but it's kind of the situation where if South Carolina is going to have the season that they need, that they want, that they are hoping for, then Missouri is one you really need to chalk up as a W. And I know there's got to be a bad taste in South Carolina's mouth after the way the game went last year, because that is a team we had seen the first few years under Muschamp. South Carolina matched up with Missouri very, very well, and then struggled last year. So that to me is a game that they're going to want really, really bad. And let's see, Mike is saying, I guess they've announced it already. So there it is, Georgia at South Carolina, Week 10, coming to Columbia. How many fans will be in the stands by that point, Chris?
I say they'll get 20,000.
So I'm still a little bit hesitant on if there will actually be fans in the stands this year. I think I'm starting to believe there will be football. Will there actually be fans? Can they get 20,000 in? Will it be more like just get, family and the band in, or will you actually have some extra people in there? We'll see. Okay, so Georgia, new quarterback. Do we know who the new quarterback is going to be?
Well, it's going to be between Jamie Newman, the transfer from Wake Forest, and JT Daniels, I would think, the transfer from Southern Cal, and that sort of looks like the battle there, most likely. So I don't know. I don't think we do know. My money is probably on Newman as a grad transfer, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, so that obviously leaves Kentucky. I was listening to the SEC Network today, Chris, after they announced the first games, and I believe I personally had underrated Kentucky in my mind as far as the expectations for them this year. There are some high expectations for Kentucky. I think we forget they get back Terry Wilson, the quarterback. He was out last year with injury, and they obviously just sort of had to make do with Lynn Bowden running basically the Wildcat last year.
Yeah.
I believe they get back a really strong offensive line again. And that game was so strange last year, Chris, because we talked coming in about Kentucky's physicality. And that was the game where we saw South Carolina just take the air out of the ball, give their running backs the football. They went into that pin and pull scheme, and they just beat Kentucky at their own game and out-physicaled them. So much like South Carolina has a bad taste about the Missouri game, I guarantee it flips back, and Kentucky has a really bad taste in their mouth about that South Carolina game.
Yeah, South Carolina really whipped them on the line of scrimmage last year, which was a reversal from what we've seen in terms of how Kentucky had been able to turn that series in their favor for the past several years, right? And so you're right. They returned. Mark Stoops has probably done, in my view, man, probably the most underrated job maybe in the whole country, just in terms of improving that program. Are they a juggernaut? No. But they've steadily increased how many folks have been drafted from the school. They've got more NFL talent coming up. I've been very impressed by them. And I think they're, the offensive line, I think they got 3 seniors, fifth-year seniors on there with Landon Young and Drake Jackson, Luke Fortner. Defensively, they got some guys in the secondary and up front and at linebacker who are physical and can run. So it's going to be Gamecock fans hoping for sort of a return to normalcy that we formerly saw before Kentucky, improved a lot. I don't know that they'll get it this year. I think it's going to be another potential nail-biting type of game because I think Kentucky's got the horses to be another really good team again this year and to make some noise. We'll see. There are a lot of teams that are expected to be pretty good this year, and so something's going to have to give.
Yeah, and again, man, no real just let-ups along the way. It's just the way it's set up this year. You get out there, you play. I thought it was interesting. And so, guys, normally when we do these during the week, we do them about an hour, so we do have a little bit of time. If y'all have questions, we'll try to get to some of them. I can't guarantee we'll get to all of them, but if you have questions, hit them. And certainly like, review, subscribe, whatever people always say. I don't know. Hit the subscribe button there if you're on YouTube. I don't think there's a subscribe button on Facebook. I guess if you're watching, you already have liked this or whatever. But so overarching thoughts on the schedule, man. it's like you said, it's going to be hard. I think the fact that a swing game is right off the bat could really work two ways for you. If South Carolina wins to start the year against Tennessee, then, like I said earlier, and let me pull this thing back up because it hasn't really locked into my brain yet. But if you win week 1, right, then because week 2 you go to Florida.
Yeah.
So that makes winning week 1 even more important, I think, because then you get very winnable in week 3, which is Vandy, right? So I think we always like to sort of break a schedule up into segments. And if you want to break it up into the first 3 or 4 games, and Auburn is week 4, if you're 2-2 after those first 4 games, you're because then you play LSU. So if you're 2-2 after the first 4 games, I think you feel pretty good because I think we all have to change the expectations for any team for what an all SEC schedule looks like. Because most years, if you're an SEC school, you're going to build in most years at least 2, but 2 to 3 games that you expect to win. Now, South Carolina obviously had their struggles last year, but most years, if South Carolina plays that schedule, they're expecting to beat, Charleston Southern, App State, North Carolina, and then Clemson, we know what they are. But you don't have those built in, supposed to be 3 wins to make your record look better. So,
yeah.
I mean, Chris, I think there will be some really, really good teams in the SEC. Let's even go broader, not even South Carolina. There are going to be some really good teams that go 5-5 in 2020. I think we almost have to just go ahead and accept that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it totally changes the conversation. And, I think a good way to look at it is we came into this season and, before the season completely changed around, before we had any inkling of that, the conversation was what? It was, hey, things need to stabilize here in Columbia. What's sort of the baseline for Will Muschamp and his staff? And really it was for us, you got to get to a bowl. I mean, that was the biggest thing, right? Whether it's, call it what it is, the fan base or recruiting or whatever it may be. Would people be happy with winning 6 games or 7 games? Not overly, right? But that would stabilize it and get it done and keep things on the right track. And honestly, if you win 6 or 7 games on a regular schedule, you're improving because of what you did last year, arguably. But now it changes because you're taking out, like you said, man, there's 3 games. You're taking out 2 or 3 games that, could be, you sort of think of a couple out of conference games and all those different types of things. So now, you're cutting it down to the 10 game slate. You're factoring in, you don't get a quote unquote break. You get your 1 bye week for South Carolina. It falls nicely, sort of square in the middle of the schedule, but it is tough. I mean, they could have gotten a worse draw with the 2 new teams. They could have. They got a home game against Auburn. They got a road game against Ole Miss. They didn't get, I don't know who would have been worse. I mean, there's certainly some options that could have been worse for them. Adding Alabama and somebody else, for example, would have been worse for them. That said, I mean, it's still, you look at this thing. I mean, how many should wins? Like if you're breaking down a should win situation, I see 2. Just in terms of a should win, where you look at South Carolina and you look at the other team and say should win, 2, 3 maybe. I see at Vandy, at Ole Miss and Missouri maybe. I don't count Kentucky in a should win. That's like a toss-up for me. They might even be. I might not even favor them in that game right now. This is just what we have to go on right now. We still got to learn a lot about South Carolina, a lot about these other teams. But I mean, really, if we're sort of handicapping it, what's a should win for you? Put you on the spot.
Vandy.
That's it for you. Yeah.
If we're just saying the word should, I mean, would I feel like South Carolina definitely can win some of those other games. Yes, absolutely. Because Missouri's with a new staff.
Yeah.
That's, again, going back to what we said before, that's a tough situation where you and I don't even remember, man, if they're not on Carolina's schedule, I don't follow Ole Miss. Like last year, I didn't follow Ole Miss near as close as I followed the East teams if they're not on. So I don't really have a great feel for what they have coming back. I do know they have two very intriguing quarterbacks. One's more of a runner, one's more of a thrower. I know this. Lane Kiffin sort of has a way of, say what you want about him. He has a way of getting sort of just squeezing something out of the offenses that he has, right? I think that's what would Vegas have that game as? I don't know. I guarantee nobody's favored by more than 3 in that game. And somebody texted me. I haven't seen. Maybe y'all have if you're watching. Have there been some official Vegas lines that have come out? Somebody texted me and said somewhere online has Tennessee and South Carolina as a pick'em to start the year, which I thought was very intriguing. Generally, Vegas knows. So that sort of gives you an early idea of where sort of the expectation is for those two schools. No, Tim, Missouri does not have Kelly Bryant anymore. But so
somebody said
Tennessee is a 2.5 favorite.
What's that?
JBSC 88 says 2.5.
Yep.
Tennessee.
So here's how I would set. If we went through and set the preseason lines for every game, that's a decent indicator of, because those things are going to change during the season. But if we went through and said who's going to be favored based on right now before the ball is kicked off whatsoever, I say Tennessee, Florida, Auburn, LSU, A&M, Georgia, and Kentucky are all favored against Carolina right now. That'd be my guess.
Mm-hmm.
I could be totally wrong, but that would be my guess. I think Carolina would be favored against Missouri, at Ole Miss, at Vandy. That's 3 games. So now does that mean absolutely anything in terms of the game? No, because I don't see anybody where Carolina's going to be a 30-point underdog. I don't see that on the schedule either. I think they're all going to be fairly close. And again, those are going to fluctuate. My own picks are going to fluctuate from week to week on who you would favor based on injuries or how each team is playing. We're just sort of taking the preseason view on that.
Yeah, because these things are going to shift, and they always do. And Chris, I was talking about this with somebody, I can't even remember who, earlier today, but the actual opportunity for some dudes for every team to sort of emerge that nobody's even thinking about that opportunity may actually be there, because we've talked about this. Everything gets so covered now from the fact that, or from the time that you're a recruit up until you arrive. We hear summer workout and winter workout scoop for third stringers. But right now, I don't think anybody's getting in those practice fields right now other than players and coaches. So, and that's across the board. There wasn't a lot of spring practice across the conference, which is generally when, some of your young players, you start to see, okay, this guy might be taking that step forward. We didn't have that. We had 5 of them at South Carolina. So I would say this is the most unknown it's probably been in a long time for SEC football teams, because there are guys that are probably behind the scenes, have worked their tails off this offseason and are going to be better maybe than expected. So I think that'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see, Chris, the effect of some added practice time now on the back end. Hey, a guy like Zaquandre White, that helped. Obviously nobody wants to be going through what they're going through right now with the pandemic. Zaquandre White having extra practice time and getting acclimated and the schedule getting pushed back, to me, that makes my expectations for him go up exponentially, because I was saying, look, this kid's going to come in and he's going to start fall practice right off the bat. He's going to arrive 6 days later. He's going to be at practice, and it's going to be like Tavian Feaster last year, where he's trying to get settled in. Now, I mean, you gave him what he's been on campus. Is it 2 weeks now?
Yeah.
2 weeks. Plus, we're still a month and we're 40 days out right now. That's plenty of time for Zaquandre White to get comfortable. And I think if we're projecting a bit, be the number 2 running back behind my projected starter, Marshawn Lloyd. So to me, for some guys like that, shoot, dude, Jalen Brooks, if this guy gets his NCAA waiver, the way Muschamp talked about him today, Muschamp doesn't say stuff like that lightly, is one thing we've learned. When he says, hey, early impressions have been positive, that means something to me. So there are some guys that I think Rico Powers having some extra time to get acclimated. He's someone we've heard a lot of good things about. Some of these guys, the extra time is going to help, I believe.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's a lot of potential for new faces, man, and that's not look, call it like it is. Whether it's new things, wrinkles schematically, which we know we're going to see because it's a completely new offense, whether it's that or some new personnel, those things are needed. You know, I mean, based on how the offense performed last year, especially in the back half, did they have, they had some good moments last year, but for the most part, it just wasn't good enough, wasn't consistent enough. And in some games it was non-existent, like the A&M game you mentioned. And so, look, there's new blood on the team that can help. Zaquandre White, Marshawn Lloyd, Jalen Brooks, if he's eligible, a freshman like Rico Powers. You throw those guys in there, man. I mean, you need them. But and Muschamp talked a lot about it today, finding help at receiver. I think today was probably the most concern, that he had shown publicly for that position in quite a while. I think he said some things that for the casual observer even could point to it and say, yeah, they need some help at wideout. And then, Mike Bobo, obviously. So he did talk about that, the changes that they felt they needed to make, across the board. And I think he was talking mostly about offense there, they made, and he feels like they made some good moves there. So, time will tell, but that's obviously a key area for them. And they are going to have some new faces there, and they're going to have a new scheme and some different wrinkles within it.
Yeah, no doubt, man. So, all right, guys, I think we're starting to see the numbers drop a little bit. So that is our sign. And I think my video on my screen looks blurry all of a sudden, like looks slow motion. So that is my sign that we're going to wrap this up for now. But, hey, we had a bunch of people, JBSC, Tim, Cowboy John, Ernest Miller. Sorry, I can't go all the way back through everybody right now. But I know we had a bunch of people on, a bunch of people commenting. So we appreciate you joining us. Chris, what do you say we do this again? I think this is something we could do a lot of.
I think we can do a lot of it, yep.
And by the way, if you have if you own a business and you'd like to be featured on here, shoot me a message, because we could definitely work something out for you. Wes at GamecockCentral.com. If you are not a subscriber to GamecockCentral.com, I urge you, just give us a shot, man. You see it right below, flash sale. Use code GameCocks. That'll get you 50% off. Plus, we'll throw in a free 3 months on top of that. Plus, if you're not ready yet, hit the code GC60. That'll get you 60 days free. And hey, man, I love doing these. I love the interaction. So as long as y'all keep showing up, we're going to keep doing it. And we appreciate y'all. We love y'all, as I always say. And I really, honestly, Chris, cannot say enough how much we appreciate our subscribers that have stuck around with no games. So that is not lost on us at all, that people have stuck around with no games and kept reading our content, keep watching our videos and stuff like that. So we definitely appreciate that. And I promise you, we're going to get to the other side of this so we can actually talk about some real football. And I really, honestly pray that is September 26th. So, all right, guys, for Chris, I'm Wes. We will see you next time.
See y'all.